Yu-Gi-Oh! By far is one of the most successful IPs and one of the most successful card games in the entire world. With multiple accomplishments like the most cards ever sold in a card game, the fastest to 1 billion cards being sold, and the record holder for the most players at a competitive event multiple times, you would think that it would be incredibly hard for Yu-Gi-Oh! To be a more successful franchise. But they actually made a huge mistake that is costing them billions, and they're still kicking themselves over it. Earlier, I made a video speaking about how one card costed a company $1 billion, and Konami was actually not in the wrong. If anything, if that was a game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Konami completely played that mistake free. But it doesn't mean that the company doesn't have its fair share of mistakes and couldn't have been a bigger IP. In today's video, we're going to be talking about those huge pivotal mistakes and how it's still having an impact on the current card game. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty on how Konami's huge mistake has snowballed, we have to take it back to its beginnings. Because figuring out the origin of Yu-Gi-Oh! Does play a significant part, and one of the most important things actually explains why Konami made this particular decision. The world in 1996 was completely different than the world we're in now. Michael Jordan came back from retirement and won his 4th NBA championship. Tupac just released his All Eyes on Me album, which is crazy good. In my opinion, that is his best album of all time, but I digress. And of course, the late great Kobe Bryant does make his debut for the Los Angeles Lakers. So it was a pretty wild year. The era and fads during that time is that everyone were infatuated with monsters, Tamagotchis, Pokemon, and fur babies were the craze. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't far off when its introduction came, focusing on cards that turned into real-life monsters to battle with one another. Coincidentally, that was also the year of Pokemon's debut, and it took a widely different path, especially with the huge controversy that happened with both of these particular franchises. You see, America in 1996 was incredibly religious, and one of the biggest things that was talked about were if these were evil. I spoke on it a bit in my last video where I talked about how Yu-Gi-Oh's artwork is getting strange, and to be honest with you, it probably is deserving of its very own video, so let me know down below in the comment section if that's something you want to see. But one of the biggest problems that Yu-Gi-Oh faced is that unlike Pokemon, Tamagotchi, fur babies, and eventually Digimon, was that Yu-Gi-Oh's artwork was a lot more dark with gothic tones. It also had other themes that the other genres wouldn't touch, like death and religion. This controversy was so big that not only did Yu-Gi-Oh have to change the artwork on cards, it actually even had to change its entire anime. In the subversion of Yu-Gi-Oh, the Shadow Realm doesn't even exist. It's actually just hell. And there's actually multiple times in the show where the characters use guns, which is kind of crazy. Because of this, we do have one mistake that actually is still biting us back. Konami's dark gothic undertones and the hesitation with promoting their product outside of Japan led them to make less merchandise to be able to promote their product. And it's actually kind of funny because cartoons are really just big commercials. The cartoon is used specifically to get boys and girls to be able to bug their parents to buy merchandise, but Konami stuck with just the cards. I think that the conservative approach could have been right at the current time, but looking back at it, it was a huge mistake. While kids around the block were buying their Goku action figures or going to Burger King to be able to get their Pokemon ball with their gold figure inside of it, Yu-Gi-Oh's primary outlet at the time was just the cards, something that both Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon did as well. Merchandising has always been a problem for Yu-Gi-Oh, as oftentimes they've been non-existent, and just recently they've started to come out with apparel. One could say it's better late than never, but you can almost calculate how much of a huge loss this has been over the course of 20 years. And to be honest, it's almost amazing on how much Yu-Gi-Oh has missed out on merchandise and is still one of the top IPs in the entire world. It just goes to show that there are so many die-hard fans of the game, and while through the earlier times it was unseen and almost unheard, it still made a huge cultural impact. I mean, imagine walking through your nearest clothes store and beside your Pokemon shirts, you see a Red Eyes Black Dragon, a Summon Skull, or even a Jinzo shirt. 9 times out of 10, you're probably getting both, which definitely helps the game a ton. But another huge problem that I've noticed that other IPs have done really well at that Yu-Gi-Oh has completely missed out on is the box office. Anime movies may be a lot more common now, but before, they were almost a no-go. That is until Pokemon came out with Pokemon the first movie, which took the world by storm. As an elder of the community, I actually remember going to see Pokemon the first movie, and oh my god, it was an experience I'll probably never forget. The visuals, the representation, the movie itself, but more importantly, how Pokemon the first movie actually tied into the next 100 Pokemon we were going to get. We got to see some new generation Pokemon a little bit early. There was also the theming and messaging for Pokemon the first movie. It doesn't matter about the circumstances that you were born. It was a complete masterpiece, so well that Pokemon went on a run, making Pokemon movies 1, 2, and 3, and all of them being crazy. In 2004, Yu-Gi-Oh! Attempted to do the same thing with its Pyramid of Light movie. Now, I actually also went to go see the Pyramid of Light movie, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, heck, it was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie, but unfortunately, it didn't have the exact same impact. While the budget being $20 million, Yu-Gi-Oh! The first movie made $29.2 million, with almost $20 million coming from the United States and Canada alone. It actually made number 4 in the box office, which isn't terrible, and did make its money back. But the huge problem is that Konami didn't go back at it. You see, the thing about this situation is that problem A fits to problem B. Pokemon's marketing and merchandising was so good, it set up for the movie to be even better. So good that they even had 2 additional movies afterward. People knew of Pokemon, people seen Pokemon everywhere, and it enticed them to get into the franchise. On the other hand, Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't have that much exposure, and making $9 million over your budget could be considered successful since you're getting more eyes to be able to watch your franchise. Unfortunately, instead of striking the iron when it was hot, Konami waited an entire 6 years to make another Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie, Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time. Now, the weird thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time is that I genuinely don't remember it. Bonds Beyond Time was exclusively only in Japanese movie theaters, alienating the American and Canadian theaters that just made it $20 million, and only released in the United States and other places on DVD. Bonds Beyond Time only made $2 million in the box offices and $3 million worldwide, as opposed to the $29 million that the first movie made. I would consider this a massive failure. Meanwhile, while competitors like Pokemon were already on their 13th movie, not really caring if it made enough money in the box office, just spreading their franchise to as many eyes as possible. It then took Yu-Gi-Oh! Another 6 years to release its Dark Side of Dimensions film, which I actually thoroughly enjoyed. The only problem with this is between the non-existing merchandising that they had, as well as the inconsistent spacing in between movies. The Dark Side of Dimensions only made $7.5 million while having an estimated budget of $10 to $15 million. The box office actually ties into a way bigger problem that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has when you compare it to some of the other popular franchises in the world. You see, other popular franchises have found a way to make old things fresh. In Pokemon, Ash Ketchum was a 20-year-old for 30 years. He traveled through all of the regions in hopes to be a Pokemon champion and just recently became a champion. In Dragon Ball Z, Goku's always on the quest to be stronger. Every time he does reach his peak, a new villain comes out to push his limits. And we can pretty much go over and over and over again with this forever, but the bottom line is that these franchises find a way to make the old new. Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't do that. You see, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Ended around the Dark Side of Dimensions in 2004. Quickly after that, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX came out, which ended in roughly a few years. After that, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which also ended in a couple of years. Then Zexal, Arc 5, so on and so forth. In fact, there are 2 huge problems with this that can put a bad taste in the viewer's mouth. One is that those Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchises never finished in dub. Outside of the original series in Yu-Gi-Oh!, in order for you to watch the rest of the other anime, you have to find a way to get the sub. And if there's anything that I personally know about people, when you have to go out of your way to watch something, a lot of times you'll just simply fall off. The next thing is, while you can make spin-off series and other series, none of these actually really attach to the original season of Yu-Gi-Oh! It created a huge problem where a lot of people that were attached to Yu-Gi-Oh! Were attached to Yu-Gi-Oh! For the very first interaction that they've had with Yu-Gi-Oh! And since they couldn't get that interaction anymore, they've moved on. So it's almost a no-brainer when you make a series 12 years later to reference the original anime, the anime that most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players haven't even grown up watching. It would fail, because it simply fails to resonate with most people in the modern franchise, and it's way too late to bring the people that once loved Yu-Gi-Oh! Back into it through media screens. Now, despite all of these mishaps, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still a worldwide success. Being the #1 card game in the world and one of the most successful IPs in the history of the world definitely still means a ton. But one would have to wonder if not merchandising Yu-Gi-Oh properly, which could have also played a huge part in releasing their Yu-Gi-Oh movie late, and then not using the movies as a bridge to get people into your franchise, could be considered an overall mistake. I think that the big wigs at Konami and Shueisha are enjoying the fruits of their labor, but the 12-year-old kid in me still wants that Yu-Gi-Oh Jinzo shirt.